All right, so today this is the preceptor interview for the ATTR 725 Athletic Training Educator course that I'm in through the Doctorate in Athletic Training program through Indiana State University. Today I have with me one of my former preceptors and good friends, Mitchell McCann. Mitch, why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of information about yourself, and then we'll ask some questions.
All right. As you said, my name is Mitchell McCann. From Atlanta, Georgia. I did my undergrad at the University of Georgia, and I am now a graduate assistant with the football team here at the University of Utah. I've been there for a year and a half, and I finished my master's here in the spring of 2019.
Nice. Now, during this time, I'm assuming that you have been a preceptor the entire time, correct?
I have, yes.
Have you ever been a preceptor before this, or were you a clinical instructor at any point?
Not before my time here at Utah, I was not.
Okay. Did you ever have the opportunity to be a teaching assistant during your undergrad time?
I did. I helped out with a couple classes in my undergrad.
If you can think back that far, what kinds of roles did you take in that teaching assistantship?
It was more for lab-based classes, so I didn't do as much in front of the class teaching, but I just assisted with teaching students proper methods of exam or anything athletic training-based, taping, injury evaluation, or just asking general questions, whatever the students needed help with.
Awesome. Now, currently, you're a graduate assistant. You do have the opportunity to be a preceptor. So how many students do you currently supervise?
I currently supervise 2 myself. Each one of the staff members has 2 underneath them.
Okay. And then in the past, I know in the spring, you had more students than that. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you enjoy being a preceptor?
I do. It's a different way of doing things. I wasn't much of a teacher before, so it's interesting to kind of get this side of the profession.
For sure. Now, as you being a preceptor and a graduate assistant, would you kind of describe the position you're in at the moment as more just as a step along the way in order for you to get to your next goal?
Yes, absolutely.
And what would be your end goal in this career?
End goal would be working with Division I football at a Power 5 school.
Okay. Or would you hope to be, an assistant athletic trainer for one of those teams, a head?
Yeah, so for now, assistant. I don't really have any wants to be a head for now, but maybe later on down the line. But an assistant's kind of where I want to be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. So your position that you're currently in right now, if you could describe necessarily, your level of excitement for the position that you're in, like, do you love going to work? Do you get excited about it? Are there things that you do like or dislike?
Absolutely. I enjoy my job every day. There's always things that make the days not as fun sometimes, but overall, I would say that just being around athletes and helping people is kind of what I love to do. And then you just kind of deal with the stress and sometimes upset people, but
ain't that the truth?
Part of the job.
Ain't that the truth? Now, currently in the position you're in, how many hours a week are you spending at your job site? Truthfully.
This is sad to say, but probably at least 80 hours a week.
Okay. And how many hours a week, like how many of those hours are spent educating students in the clinical setting, do you think? Like actually educating them?
So like actually teaching? Maybe 30 minutes a day.
Okay.
Or so. So maybe, I don't know, 2-3 hours a week maybe.
Okay. So in your opinion, what kinds of things hinder the students from being able to get more education from you and the other preceptors?
Just from our clinical site in general is it's pretty busy. We have a lot of pressure to get things done in a very timely fashion. There's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of time to sit and explain every scenario to each student and why we did what we did, just for the fact that it's a Division I sport and everything is really important, kind of on a time crunch.
Yep.
Or and sometimes things go on when the students aren't here, so they're not able to see what's going on. So those are kind of the main hindrances with my spot.
Okay. Now, if you were able to share some of your better experiences, some of the things that excite you about your job with your students, what would you say to them? I mean, what gets you pumped and excited about this profession that you would want to teach other students?
So one of the things I think is one of the funnest parts is to be able to be there for the entire process of a guy getting hurt, doing an evaluation on him, rehabbing the guy back, and then having him continue to be successful that season or that week or however long it took. I find that to be very rewarding to myself. So if I could have a student see, you know, that whole process, because they just get small bits, especially with the rotations they have. And I believe that if they could see like this from beginning to end, and you kind of get that fulfillment and just excitement from helping somebody.
So do you feel like the students have that opportunity at, you know, the current clinical site? Do you feel like they're there long enough to be able to see a lot of that success?
I do not. With these students here have 8-week rotations. So sometimes a guy gets hurt when they're here and they never really get to see what happens in between. Their class schedules sometimes get in the way of seeing the actual rehab time with these guys. So they kind of show up and they're on a game ready or some sort of treatment modality, but haven't really seen that injury rehab process.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of makes it tough. I believe they don't get enough exposure and really get to understand like the time that we spend with these kids and then kind of what goes on in between hurt and back. So
yeah. So I'm going to kind of go off script here a little bit because I'm curious about your opinion on this. Starting in 2020, there will be a new standard where students are required to go in for basically a fully integrated portion of time. So they have to go in. There will be no class time. They're required to be solely dedicated to their clinical education site. Do you feel like that would give them the opportunity to be able to see some of these things from beginning to end, since they will have the opportunity to be there without being hindered by class?
absolutely. Absolutely. Because I feel like a lot of these things that we do happen during their class times. And if they can be here with like a sole dedication of spending, you know, the sometimes 12 to 15 hours that we spend in a day at the facility with these guys, that I think that could be really important for their learning and having them kind of understand what goes on, what we really do.
Nice. Now, with you being a preceptor, what kind of things do you find positive, or what kinds of things do you think are benefits to you being a preceptor? How do you benefit the students?
Well, I would say for myself, being a preceptor, having like the whole thing where you learn by teaching. So me teaching the students, I feel like betters my understanding of things as well. So I get to actually verbally, teach what I've learned myself. And then I think just from the scenario, like I have been in their shoes before and having understood where they're coming from and with the clinical sites and the time constraints with the classes, that I feel like that if they have any, the questions they ask about stuff like that, I've been in their shoes. So I feel like it's kind of a benefit for them. But for me, it's also, like I said, talking through what I already know out loud kind of helps me as well.
Okay. Now, do you feel, and honestly, do you feel like you are able to provide a good mentorship for the students in your current position?
It's challenging. Again, with just time constraints of everyone, and I'm kind of running around doing a lot of things. So I do my best. I don't know if I'm the best at it or that the scenario is the best, but just the way things are set up sometimes make it kind of tough.
Yeah, no, that I definitely understand that, especially going through that program.
Right.
So we've kind of talked about like what excites you about, being able to show the students and teach the students and stuff like that. And what excites you about the athletic training profession currently. Do you feel like there's anything that, you feel like could change in the athletic training profession that would get you even more excited about what we do?
Well, at the current place I'm at right now, it's more, if we could have more staff to where we could spread time out a little more and kind of have that work-life balance a little bit better would be, I think would be beneficial to everyone. And then Well, I'd say let's see, areas to improve. I think that's the main one, because then when you get the less, you're there more, you're around each other more, you get less time apart.
Yep.
And you get the kind of the frustration, the stress, the all that stuff added on to the fact that you've been there for 15 hours that day. So
yeah,
I think that's a key thing in my particular situation.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And just kind of as a finishing comment on this. So we've talked about, what makes you excited about the profession and stuff like that. How do you show your students, like the kids that you work with every day, that you're excited about this? I mean, do you talk to them about experiences? Do you try to keep up in a good attitude? Like, what kinds of things do you do to keep your students interested and your students excited about athletic training and the profession they've chosen?
I always try to keep, and you've seen this before from me, but I always try to keep a pretty positive outlook on life in general, which makes me love my job a little more. I try to look at the positives in every situation. Mm-hmm. Try to keep the stress as low as I can. And so I believe that, like, keeping that positive attitude, always staying focused on what we're doing. And then I try to share experiences with the students, especially if they have questions about anything. I'm more than happy I'm pretty open with them as far as if they need me to let me know. But I believe it's really a key in this profession, and I hope that the students pick this up from me, is just the positive. You got to stay positive. Don't look at the negative all the time. And it's one of those, don't panic unless you actually need to. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, mm-hmm. kind of just keeping that kind of even keel, positive attitude all the time, keeping a good vibe in the training room. Then the guys will be happy. If guys are happy, they'll do what you ask them to do. So it's kind of the players feed off how we react to them. So if you're negative all the time and you're kind of badgering a guy all the time, then they're not going to want to be in there. They're not going to want to be doing rehab and stuff like that. So, and if they're upset, then everyone gets upset, and it's just kind of one of those circles that just it'll just keep cycling through the same emotions. So I try to just keep positive outlook on everything, and I believe that that's key in this profession. I think the students, or hopefully they've kind of picked that up, that it's a pretty important thing to have, because if you're negative all the time, it's not going to be very fun.
No, for sure. And then last question, I just thought of it, and I'll let you get back to work. I know when I was going through the University of Utah program, every single fall and every single spring, there was always a ton of students that were at football. But I know this semester that's kind of changed. I know that there's less students that are at football. Do you feel like that has improved your ability to talk to your students and work with them? Do you feel like it's hindered the process there at football? How do you feel about having less students now?
I don't think it's necessarily hindered the process any more than it was previously. It just does require a little bit more from each student, mm-hmm. which I think in the long run could be good for them. And it does allow them more times where we can ask a little bit more of each student and kind of have them put a little bit more responsibility on their plate, so that if they make a mistake or anything, that we can talk through that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you get the large groups, people just get lost in the mix and they kind of fade into the background. So I think with a little bit less, it's going to require the students to be a little bit more on their game. And so far it definitely has. And it puts a little bit more on us as far as making sure that we don't go over hours limits and don't have them here all the time, make sure they have a day off and all the Katie rules and everything.
Yeah.
But as far as coverage and everything, I think it really makes these kids kind of have to lock in a little bit more, because you don't have multiple people. You don't have multiple people with a group. You know what I'm saying? So it's your group is your group, and you can't trust on someone else kind of helping you out. So I think it's good in that sense, and we'll just kind of see how it goes, especially since this is the first time they've done this to us. So we'll go from there.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, I appreciate all your help, man. Cool. It's always good talking to you. So I'm going to go ahead and end this recording at this time. Again, thank you very much, Mitchell. I truly appreciate all your help.
Absolutely. Glad to help.